Natalie Harper stared at the stack of bills on her mahogany desk, her father's voice echoing from the speakerphone like a death sentence. The Harper Grand Hotel chain, once the jewel of luxury hospitality, teetered on the edge of bankruptcy. 3 generations of family legacy hung by a thread thinner than the silk curtains that adorned their flagship property. "Natalie, sweetheart, we have maybe 6 weeks before the banks foreclose." Her father's tired voice crackled through the connection from his hospital bed in Switzerland. "I should never have let pride keep me from selling when we had the chance." Pressed her fingertips against her temples, fighting back tears that threatened to ruin her carefully applied makeup. The numbers on the financial reports swam before her eyes like accusatory witnesses to her family's downfall. 27 years old, Harvard Business School graduate, and she was about to lose everything her grandfather had built from nothing. There has to be another way, Dad. Some investor, some loan, something. Her voice wavered despite her best efforts to sound confident. "I'm afraid not, Princess. Unless a miracle walks through that door in the next few days, we're finished." The line went dead, leaving Natalie alone in the cavernous office that had once belonged to her grandfather. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan sparkled. In the afternoon sun, oblivious to her crumbling world, she had meetings with lawyers, accountants, creditors lined up for the rest of the week, but they all led to the same inevitable conclusion. Her assistant knocked softly before entering. "Ms. Harper, there's a gentleman here to see you. Says it's urgent business regarding your hotels." Natalie straightened her navy blue blazer and checked her reflection in the antique mirror. Even facing financial ruin, a Harper never looked anything less than impeccable. "Send him in, please." The man who walked through her office door made her breath catch in her throat. Ryan Castellano moved with the confident stride of someone who owned half the world and was actively acquiring the other half. His charcoal gray suit was perfectly tailored to his tall, athletic frame, and his dark hair was styled with casual precision. But it was his piercing blue eyes that held her attention, calculating and intense as they surveyed her office before settling on her face. "Miss Harper," his deep voice carried just a hint of his Italian heritage, "I believe we have something to discuss." The billionaire's dilemma. Ryan had done his research thoroughly. Natalie Harper was 27, unmarried, and desperate. Her hotel chain was bleeding money faster than a severed artery, and she had no family left to bail her out. Most importantly, she was beautiful, intelligent, and carried herself with the kind of old money elegance that would impress the conservative Japanese investors he needed to secure his latest acquisition. "Mr. Castellano," she stood and extended her hand with practiced grace. "I wasn't expecting you, but please, have a seat." Her handshake was firm, professional, but he noticed the slight tremor in her fingers. Fear, probably. Or maybe she was one of those women who got nervous around powerful men. Either way, it would work to his advantage. "Actually, Ms. Harper, I believe I can assist you." He settled into the leather chair across from her desk, noting how she unconsciously leaned forward when he mentioned help. "I'm aware of your current financial situation." Her composure slipped for just a moment, flash of vulnerability crossing her features before the professional mask slammed back into place. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Mean that you're approximately $43 million in debt. Your primary investors have pulled out, and you have roughly 6 weeks before your creditors force you into bankruptcy." He delivered the information with clinical precision. Watching as each word landed like a physical blow, Natalie's hands clenched into fists on her desk. "If you came here to gloat about my family's misfortune, or to make a lowball offer for our properties, you can save us both some time and leave now." Ryan smiled. He admired her spirit, even in the face of complete financial destruction. "On the contrary, I'm here to offer you a solution. Rather unconventional one, but a solution. Nonetheless." She raised an eyebrow, her green eyes flashing with a mixture of hope and suspicion. "I'm listening." "I need a wife, Ms. Harper. Not for love, not for companionship, but for business. There's a deal I'm pursuing with a very traditional Japanese corporation, and they place enormous value on family stability. A married man with an established, respectable wife would have a significant advantage in securing their partnership." The silence that followed was so complete that Ryan could hear the distant sounds of traffic from the street below. Natalie stared at him as if he had just suggested they rob a bank together. "You want to marry me?" she said slowly, as if testing the words. "For business?" I want to enter into a mutually beneficial contract that happens to involve marriage. Yes. Get enough money to save your hotels and restore your family's legacy. I get a wife who looks perfect on paper and won't make emotional demands on my time or attention. The negotiation Adatli felt as though she had stepped into an alternate reality where billionaire strangers propose marriage like business deals. She studied Ryan's face, looking for any sign that this was an elaborate joke. But his expression remained serious and expectant. "Let me make sure I understand," she said carefully. "You want to marry me to impress some Japanese investors, and, in return, you'll pay off my debts. I'll pay off your debts, provide you with a generous monthly allowance, and ensure that your hotels not only survive, but thrive under my business umbrella. After 2 years, we divorce amicably, and you keep everything." The offer was like a lifeline, thrown to a drowning woman, but Natalie forced herself to think rationally despite the desperate hope blooming in her chest. "And what exactly would this marriage entail? I assume you're not suggesting we live together as a happy couple? We would maintain separate residences but make public appearances together as needed. Charity events, business dinners, the occasional weekend getaway for the sake of our image. Nothing more intimate than what any business partnership requires. No physical relationship?" The question slipped out before she could stop it, and she felt heat creep up her neck. Ryan's eyes darkened. "Slightly. That would be entirely up to us, but it wouldn't be required by the contract. This is business, Ms. Harper, not a romance novel." She stood and walked to the window, needing distance from his overwhelming presence to think clearly. The city stretched. Out below her, millions of people going about their lives without knowing that hers hung in the balance of this impossible conversation. "I need details," she said without turning around. "I need to see exactly what you're proposing before I can even consider it, of course." She heard him move behind her. Then he was standing close enough that she could smell his cologne, expensive and masculine. "My lawyers will have a contract drawn up by tomorrow. We can meet here to review the terms." Natalie turned to face him, surprised by how close he was standing. His height forced her to tilt her head back to meet his eyes, and for a moment, she felt overwhelmed by his physical presence. "And if I say no, then you say no, and I wish you the best of luck with your creditors." His tone was matter of fact, but she caught something else in his expression, a flicker of interest that had nothing to do with business. "You could have any woman in the city," she said. "Models, actresses, socialites, who would jump at the chance to marry a billionaire. Someone who actually wants this kind of arrangement." Ryan stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his blue eyes. "But none of them have what I need, Miss Harper. Class, intelligence, family reputation, and most importantly, no romantic illusions about what this would be. You're perfect for my purposes." The way he said perfect sent an unexpected shiver down her spine. Natalie struggled to maintain her professional composure, but something about Ryan Castellano made her feel off balance in a way that had nothing to do with his business proposal. "I'll review your contract," she heard herself saying, "but I'm not making any promises." Ryan smiled, and for the first time since he had entered her office, the expression seemed genuinely warm. "I wouldn't expect anything less from a Harper." Decision, that evening, Natalie sat in her apartment overlooking Central Park. A glass of wine in her hand and Ryan's business card on the coffee table before her. The space felt too quiet, too empty. Filled with antique furniture and family photographs that reminded her of everything she was about to lose. She called her best friend Rebecca, needing to talk through the impossible situation with someone who knew her well enough to offer honest advice. "He wants to what?" Rebecca's voice pitched higher with each word. "Nat, please tell me you're not seriously considering marrying a complete stranger." "He's not a complete stranger. Nay, he's Ryan Castellano, the tech mogul. You've seen him on magazine covers." Natalie curled up on her sofa, pulling a cashmere throw around her shoulders. "I've seen serial killers on magazine covers too. Doesn't mean I want to marry them." Becca's tone was half joking, but Natalie could hear the genuine concern underneath. "This is insane, even by your standards." "Is it more insane than losing everything my family worked for? Is it more insane than declaring bankruptcy and watching creditors auction off my grandfather's life's work?" The words came out more bitter than Natalie had intended. A long pause. "Okay, I can hear how desperate you are, but marriage, Nat, even a fake one, That's a huge step. It's a business contract with some legal paperwork attached. 2 years of occasional dinner parties and charity galas, and I save the hotels. When it's over, I'll be financially secure enough to rebuild properly. And what if you develop feelings for him? Or what if he expects more than you're willing to give? The question hit closer to home than Natalie wanted to admit. There had been something in Ryan's eyes when he looked at her, something that suggested their arrangement might not stay purely professional as easily as he claimed. "I'll be careful," she said. "I'll protect myself." Famous last words, Rebecca muttered. "But if you're really going to do this, I want to meet him first. I want to look this guy in the eye and make sure he's not planning to add you to his collection of acquisitions permanently." After she hung up, Natalie walked to her bedroom and stood before the antique mirror that had belonged to her grandmother. The woman looking back at her had her family's classic features, the same cheekbones and determined chin that had graced Harper women for 3 generations. But her eyes held a desperation that none of her ancestors had ever faced. She thought about her grandfather, who had built the first Harper Hotel from nothing after immigrating from Ireland. She thought about her father, lying in a hospital bed in Switzerland, carrying the weight of the family's failures on his conscience. She thought about all the employees who would lose their jobs if the hotels closed, the legacy that would disappear forever. When her phone rang at midnight, she wasn't surprised to see Ryan's number on the display. "Having second thoughts, Miss Harper?" His voice was warm through the phone, more intimate than it had been in her office. "Are you?" she countered. A low chuckle. "I don't have second thoughts about business decisions. I research thoroughly and commit completely. And that's all this is to you. Business decision?" Another pause, longer this time. "What else would it be?" Something in his tone suggested the question was more complicated than he was willing to admit. But Natalie was too tired and too overwhelmed to analyze the subtle implications. "I'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Castellano. We have a contract to review." The marriage ceremony took place in a small chapel overlooking the Hudson River. Witnessed only by their lawyers and a photographer hired to document their union for the Japanese investors, Natalie wore a simple cream-colored dress that hugged her curves elegantly, while Ryan looked devastatingly handsome in his navy suit. As they exchanged rings, she couldn't shake the feeling that this felt more real than any contract had a right to feel. "You may kiss the bride," the officiant announced. Ryan hesitated for just a moment, his blue eyes searching hers. When he leaned in, Natalie expected a brief, perfunctory kiss for the camera. Instead, his lips lingered against hers, soft and warm, sending unexpected electricity through her entire body. When they broke apart, both looked genuinely surprised by the intensity of that simple touch. "For the photos," Ryan murmured, but his voice was rougher than usual. "Of course," Natalie whispered back, though her heart was racing in a way that had nothing to do with business arrangements. 3 weeks into their marriage, they had settled into a routine of careful politeness. Ryan had purchased a penthouse apartment for Natalie in the same building as his own, just 2 floors down. They shared morning coffee on the days when they both happened to be in the kitchen at the same time, retained separate social calendars, and met only for the business functions that required their presence as a married couple. It should have been perfect. It should have been exactly what they both wanted. But Natalie found herself looking forward to those chance encounters in the elevator, to the way Ryan's face softened when he saw her first thing in the morning, to the warmth of his hand on the small of her back when he guided her through crowded rooms at social events. The charity. Galetha Metropolitan Museum's annual charity gala was their first major public appearance as husband and wife. Natalie spent hours getting ready, choosing a stunning emerald green gown that brought out her eyes and hiring a professional to style her hair in an elegant updo. When Ryan knocked on her door at 7 o'clock, his sharp intake of breath when she opened it made her stomach flutter. "You look incredible," he said, and for once, there was no calculated business charm in his voice. It's just honest male appreciation. "Thank you. You clean up rather well yourself." She smoothed an imaginary wrinkle from his black tuxedo, letting her fingers linger a moment longer than necessary on the silk lapel. The gala was a glittering affair, filled with Manhattan's elite sipping champagne and discussing their latest acquisitions. Ryan kept his hand possessively on Natalie's waist as they moved through the crowd, introducing her as his wife with a pride that seemed genuine. She found herself leaning into his touch, enjoying the solid warmth of his body next to hers. Castellano's smooth voice interrupted their conversation with a prominent art dealer. How refreshing to see such newlywed bliss. Natalie turned to find herself face-to-face with Camilla Westbrook, stunning brunette with sharp features and calculating eyes. The woman looked at Ryan with the familiarity of shared history, and Natalie felt an unexpected stab of jealousy. Camilla, Ryan's voice was carefully neutral. I'd like you to meet my wife, Natalie. Yes, the hotel heiress. Camilla's smile was razor-sharp, such a whirlwind romance. Ryan, you always did like your business deals to be mutually beneficial. The implication hung in the air like poison. Natalie felt heat rise in her cheeks, but before she could respond, Ryan stepped closer to her, his arm tightening protectively around her waist. My relationship with my wife is hardly your concern, Camilla. His tone was ice-cold. If you'll excuse us. As they walked away, Natalie could feel Camilla's eyes boring into her back. Ex-girlfriend, she asked quietly. Ex-fiancé, Ryan corrected. She broke off the engagement 2 years ago, when she decided I wasn't ambitious enough for her tastes. What? Ambitious enough? You're one of the richest men in the country. What? Ryan's smile was bitter. Apparently, I wasn't ruthless enough. She wanted someone who would step on anyone to get ahead, no matter the cost. When I refused to destroy a competitor's business just because I could, she decided I was too soft for her plans. Looking up at his profile, Natalie saw something vulnerable. In his expression that he usually kept hidden. She was an idiot to let you go. He looked down at her in surprise. You don't even know me, Natalie. Not really. I know enough. She meant it. In the 3 weeks of their marriage, she had seen glimpses of the man behind the billionaire facade. The way he treated his staff with respect, his genuine concern for her comfort and well-being, the careful distance he maintained to avoid pressuring her into anything she didn't want, the kiss that changed everything later that evening. After they had made the rounds and spoken to all the right people, Ryan led Natalie onto the museum's rooftop terrace for some air. The city sparkled below them, and a cool breeze carried the sounds of traffic and distant music. I think that went well, Natalie said, slipping out of her heels and sighing in relief. Your Japanese investors should be thoroughly convinced that we're a devoted couple. Thoroughly, Ryan agreed, but he wasn't looking at the city. He was looking at her, studying her face in the moonlight with an intensity that made her breath. Catch, Ryan? She questioned softly. Keep telling myself this is just business, he said quietly. That you're just playing a role, that I'm just playing a role. But then you defend me to people like Camilla, or you laugh at something I say, or you look at me the way you're looking at me right now. I forget that this is supposed to be pretend. Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. How am I looking at you? Like you're feeling the same thing I'm feeling. He stepped closer, his hands coming up to frame her face gently. Like this stopped being about business the moment we said our vows. Ryan, she whispered, but she didn't step away. She couldn't. The pull between them was too strong, too real. Tell me to stop, he murmured, his thumb brushing across her lower lip. Tell me this is just business, and I'll walk away right now. Instead of answering with words, Natalie rose up on her tiptoes and kissed him. Not the careful, staged kiss from their wedding, but a real kiss. Full of 3 weeks of suppressed longing and careful distance, finally crumbling. Ryan groaned softly against her lips and pulled her closer, his hands tangling in her hair as they lost themselves in each other. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Ryan rested his forehead against hers, his eyes closed. This complicates things, he said. I know, Natalie whispered back. The contract specifically stated no emotional involvement. I know that too. I should probably care more about that than I do right now. Natalie smiled, her hands still fisted in the fabric of his tuxedo jacket. Probably. Instead of stepping away, Ryan kissed her again, softer this time, but no less devastating. When he pulled back, his blue eyes were dark with promise. Come upstairs with me tonight, he said. Not because the contract says so, not for business, because I want you there. Natalie looked into his face, seeing not the calculated billionaire who had walked into her office a month ago, but the man who had been slowly revealing himself to her in coffee-scented mornings and protective gestures. The man who was looking at her like she was something precious, something worth risking everything for. Yes, she whispered. The morning after Natalie woke up in Ryan's arms. sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse bedroom. She could feel the steady rise and fall of his chest beneath her cheek, hear the strong beat of his heart. For a moment, she let herself enjoy the fantasy that this was real, that she was waking up next to a man who loved her, rather than one who had married her for business convenience. "Good morning," Ryan's voice was rough with sleep, but warm. "Morning." She tilted her head to look at him, noting how different he looked with his hair mussed, and his usual controlled expression relaxed. "Younger, more vulnerable. Any regrets?" he asked quietly. Natalie considered the question seriously. Last night had been perfect, passionate and tender in equal measure. But in the cold light of morning, she couldn't ignore the complications they had created. "About last night? No," she said honestly. "About what it means for our arrangement, I'm not sure yet." Ryan's arm tightened around her. "We don't have to figure it all out right now. We can take this one day at a time." The sound of Ryan's phone, buzzing insistently from the nightstand, interrupted the moment. He reached for it with obvious reluctance, his face darkening as he read the message. "What is it?" Natalie asked, sensing trouble. "The Japanese investors want to meet with us this afternoon. Apparently, there are some questions about our marriage that they need addressed before they'll finalize the deal." Cold feelings settled in Natalie's stomach. "What kind of questions?" Ryan sat up, running a hand through his dark hair. "I don't know yet. But whatever it is, we need to be prepared to convince them that we're the real deal." As Natalie watched him reach for his laptop, already shifting back into business mode, she couldn't help but wonder if last night had been a beautiful mistake. That was about to cost them everything they had worked for. The line between business and pleasure had been irrevocably crossed. But she had no idea what waited for them on the other side. The meeting with the Japanese investors took place in Ryan's corporate boardroom, a gleaming space with panoramic views of Manhattan. Hiroshi Tanaka, the lead investor, was a distinguished man in his 60s, with steel gray hair and penetrating dark eyes. He sat across from Ryan and Natalie with the stillness of someone accustomed to having his every word. "Carry weight. Mr. and Mrs. Castellano," he began formally. "We have received some concerning information about the nature of your marriage." Natalie felt Ryan tense beside her, though his expression remained perfectly controlled. Under the table, his hand found hers, squeezing gently. "What kind of information?" Ryan asked. Tanaka slid a folder across the polished table. Inside were photographs of Ryan and Natalie from various public events, but also older photos of Ryan with Camilla, detailed financial reports about Natalie's hotel chain, and what looked like a private investigator's report on their relationship timeline. "According to our research, Ms. Harper was facing bankruptcy at the exact time you began your courtship. The timing is quite convenient, is it not?" Natalie's stomach plummeted. Someone had been digging into their past, piecing together the truth about their arrangement. "Mr. Tanaka, I understand how this might look, but furthermore," Tanaka continued, "we have spoken with Ms. Camilla Westbrook, who suggested that this marriage might be more of a business transaction than a love match." Ryan's jaw clenched. "Camilla is hardly an objective source. She's been trying to cause problems for my personal life since our engagement ended, perhaps. But her claims align with the suspicious timing of your relationship." Tanaka's voice was measured professional. "My company values integrity above all else. Mr. Castellano, we cannot enter into business partnerships with individuals who would fabricate something as sacred as marriage for financial gain." The room fell silent except for the distant hum of traffic far below. Natalie stared at the photographs in the folder, seeing their entire carefully constructed facade crumbling before her eyes. The Japanese deal was worth hundreds of millions of dollars to Ryan's company, and without it, her own financial security would disappear as well. "You want proof that our marriage is real?" Natalie said quietly. Tanaka nodded. "We would need convincing evidence that this union is based on genuine affection and commitment, not mutual business interests." The truth revealed that evening. Ryan paced his penthouse living room like a caged animal while Natalie curled up on his sofa, watching him with worried eyes. They had asked for 48 hours to provide the evidence Tanaka requested, but neither of them knew how to prove something that had started as pure fiction. "We could stage some romantic gestures," Ryan suggested. "Weekend getaways, love letters, something that looks convincing. They'll see right through anything staged." "Tanaka is too smart for that." Natalie rubbed her temples, feeling a headache building. "Besides, after last night, I'm not sure I want to keep pretending." Ryan stopped pacing and looked at her. What do you mean? I mean that somewhere along the way this stopped being pretend for me. The words came out in a rush, before she could lose her nerve. I know it wasn't supposed to happen. I know it complicates everything. But I'm falling in love with you, Ryan. Actually in love. Not for business or convenience or any other reason. Except that you're kind and brilliant, and you make me feel like I'm worth something beyond my family's money. The silence that followed felt endless. Ryan stared at her with an expression she couldn't read, and Natalie's heart sank as the seconds ticked by without a response. I'm sorry, she said quickly. I know that's not what you wanted to hear. No, this was supposed to be simple. Simple, Ryan repeated, and then he laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. Natalie, nothing about you has been simple since the moment you walked into that boardroom. Do you think I make a habit of kissing my business partners the way I kissed you last night? Do you think I normally care whether my contractual arrangements are happy or comfortable or feel appreciated? He crossed the room and knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. I've been falling in love with you for weeks. I've been terrified to admit it because I thought you were just playing a part. I thought you were enduring my company for the sake of your hotels. You're serious? Natalie searched his face, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. Dead serious. I love the way you hum while you make coffee in the morning. I love how you get that little line between your eyebrows when you're concentrating on something. I love that you defended. Me too, Camilla, even though you barely knew me. I love that you're brave enough to save your family's legacy and stubborn enough to argue with me when you think I'm wrong. Tears spilled down Natalie's cheeks. So what do we do now? If we tell Tanaka the truth about how this started, we lose everything. If we keep lying, we're building our future on a foundation of deception. Ryan cupped her face gently, wiping away her tears with his thumbs. We tell him the truth, all of it. How it started, how it changed, what it means to us now. That's incredibly risky. The best things in life usually are. The grand gesture the next morning, Ryan called Tanaka and requested a final meeting. Instead of the sterile boardroom, he asked the investor to meet them at the Harper Grand Hotel's flagship property in Midtown Manhattan. Natalie was confused by the location choice, but she trusted Ryan enough to follow his lead. They met Tanaka. In the hotel's elegant lobby, surrounded by the marble columns and crystal chandeliers that represented 3 generations of Harper family pride, Ryan had dressed more casually than usual, in dark jeans and a navy sweater that made his eyes look impossibly blue. Natalie wore a simple sundress, her hair loose around her shoulders. Mr. Tanaka, thank you for meeting us here, Ryan began. I wanted you to see this place because it's important to understanding our story. He gestured around the opulent lobby. 6 months ago, Natalie was facing the loss of everything you see here. Her family's legacy, her employees' livelihoods, her own future. I offered her a business arrangement that would solve both of our problems. A marriage of convenience that would give me credibility with traditional investors like yourself, and give her the financial backing she needed to save her hotels. Tanaka's expression remained impassive, but he was clearly listening carefully. You're absolutely right that our marriage began as a business transaction, Ryan continued. But you're wrong if you think that's what it is now, he turned to face Natalie, taking her hands in his. I proposed to this woman because I needed a wife on paper. But I'm standing here today because I can't imagine my life without her. Because she challenges me to be better than I was, because she makes me laugh, because she's the first person I want to see in the morning, and the last person I want to talk to before I fall asleep. Natalie felt fresh tears threatening as Ryan dropped to one knee right there in the middle of the lobby, pulling out a ring box that definitely hadn't been part of their original contract. Natalie Harper Castellano, our marriage may have started as a business deal, but I want it to continue. As a love story, will you marry me again? Not for contracts or investors or financial security, but because I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life proving it to you every single day. The entire lobby had gone quiet, hotel guests and staff stopping to watch the scene unfolding. Before them, Natalie looked down at Ryan, this brilliant, complicated man who had started as a stranger, offering salvation, and somehow become her heart's deepest desire. Yes, she whispered, and then louder. Yes, of course, yes. The lobby erupted in applause as Ryan slipped the new ring onto her finger, a stunning solitaire that caught the light from the chandeliers. When he kissed her, it was with all the passion and promise of a man who had just committed his future to the woman he loved. When they finally broke apart, Tanaka was watching them with what might have been the ghost of a smile. "Mr. Castellano," he said formally, "I believe we have a deal to finalize." The perfect ending 6 months later, Natalie stood on the terrace of their home in the Hamptons. Watching Ryan play with their neighbor's golden retriever on the beach below, the Harper hotel chain was not only solvent but thriving under the management structure they had developed together. Japanese partnership had exceeded everyone's expectations. They were already planning expansion into 3 new markets. But more importantly, their second wedding had been everything their first one wasn't. Surrounded by family and friends, with genuine vows that brought tears to everyone's eyes. They had promised to love each other not for business or convenience, but for all the messy, complicated, wonderful reasons that real couples fell in love. Ryan appeared behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist and resting his chin on top of her head. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Castellano." "I was just thinking about how we started," Natalie said, leaning back against his solid warmth. "Two desperate people making a deal that seemed like the most practical solution to our problems. And now, I think maybe we were never as practical as we thought we were." She turned in his arms to face him. "I think maybe we were just two people who were meant to find each other. We needed a business contract to give us an excuse to take the risk." Ryan smiled, the same devastating smile that had made her stomach flutter that first day in her office. But now, it was accompanied by the warmth and tenderness of a man who had chosen to love her every single day since. "Best business deal I ever made," he murmured against her lips. "Terrible business deal," Natalie corrected with a laugh. "We completely failed to maintain professional distance. True, we broke every single term of our original contract. Good thing we negotiated a better one." As the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Ryan kissed his wife with all the passion of their wedding night and all the promise of their future together. What had begun as a marriage of convenience had become the most inconvenient, impractical, absolutely perfect love story either of them could have imagined.
Oh.
Some contracts, they had learned, were meant to be broken, and some business deals turned out to be destiny in disguise. Epilogue. 5 years later, the Harper Castellano Hotel Group had become one of the most prestigious hospitality brands in the world, with properties spanning 3 continents. But on this particular Tuesday morning, the Empire's co-founders were more concerned with diaper changes than board meetings. "She has your stubborn streak," Ryan observed, trying to coax their 18-month-old daughter Emma into her high chair while she determinedly tried to escape. "She has your intelligence," Natalie countered, adjusting 2-year-old James on her hip while he babbled happily in what sounded like a mixture of English and Italian. "Look how she's already figured out 3 different ways to avoid eating her breakfast." Ryan finally succeeded in securing Emma in her chair, where she promptly threw a handful of cereal on the floor and clapped her hands in delight. "Remind me why we thought having 2 under 3 was a good idea." "Because you said," and I quote, "I want a house full of little versions of you running around." Natalie laughed, kissing James's dark curls before setting him down to play. Their penthouse had been transformed over the years, filled with children's toys, family photos, and the comfortable chaos of a home built on love rather than contracts. The formal dining room now housed a play area, and Ryan's once pristine home office had been invaded by coloring books and building blocks. "Mrs. Castellano." Their housekeeper, Mrs. Chen, called from the kitchen. "You have a call from that journalist again?" "The one writing the article about successful business partnerships?" Natalie and Ryan exchanged amused glances. Their story had become somewhat legendary in business circles, the fake marriage that turned into a fairy tale ending. Publishers had offered them book deals, screenwriters wanted to option their story, and business schools used their partnership as a case study in successful mergers. "Tell her we're not available for interviews," Natalie said. "Some stories are meant to be lived, not sold." Ryan wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder as they watched their children play. "Any regrets about giving up the media spotlight?" "Never," Natalie said firmly. "Let them write articles about other people's business deals. This is our real life, and it's perfect exactly as it is." Emma toddled over to them, her tiny arms reaching up to be held. Ryan scooped her up and she immediately grabbed his face with her chubby hands. Babbling something that sounded remarkably like "Dada to love." "She's right," Ryan murmured, looking at his wife and children with wonder that still caught him off guard sometimes. "Dada does love. more than any contract could ever capture. That evening, after the children were finally asleep, Ryan found Natalie on their bedroom balcony, looking out at the city lights. She was holding something in her hands, and when he got closer, he saw it was their original marriage contract, yellowed now with age. "Found this in the safe today. When I was looking for Emma's birth certificate," she said softly. "Look at all these clauses about maintaining emotional distance and keeping separate lives." Ryan read over her shoulder, shaking his head at the formal language that had once seemed so important. "We really had no idea what we were getting into. Did we?" "The best kind of clueless," Natalie agreed. She walked to the fireplace in their bedroom and held the contract over the flames. "Ready to make this official?" "Wait," Ryan stopped her. "What if we need it someday? Proof of how this all started." Natalie smiled, the same radiant smile that had knocked him sideways that first day in her office. But now warmed by years of shared laughter, tears, and everything in between. "We don't need proof. Ryan, we have Emma's laugh and James's first steps and 5 years of choosing each other every single morning. We have hotel properties named after our children and a foundation that helps other family businesses survive hard times. We have a love story that started with the worst reasons and became the best thing that ever happened to either of us." She held the contract over the flames again. "Besides, the only contract that matters now is the one we write every day with our actions." Ryan nodded, and together they watched the paper catch fire, the formal legal language disappearing in smoke and flame. As the last of their original business agreement turned to ash, Ryan pulled Natalie close and kissed her with all the passion of a man who had found his soulmate in the most unexpected way. "I love you, Mrs. Castellano," he whispered against her hair. "I love you too, Mr. Castellano. Best business partner I ever had." And in their bedroom filled with family photos and children's drawings, surrounded by the evidence of a life built on genuine love rather than convenient arrangements, they renewed their vows the way they did every night, with quiet promises, gentle touches, and the absolute certainty that some of the best things in life really do come from taking the biggest risks. Their story had started with a desperate proposal in a failing hotel office. It ended every night with whispered "I love yous" in a home filled with laughter, dreams, and the kind of happiness that no amount of money could buy. The contract was gone, but the love it had accidentally created would last forever. The end.